Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Microsoft 365 Business Voice presentation. My name is Tyson Choctane. I'm Executive Vice President of Broadview Networks. And today we are coming to you from our boardroom at our Taylor office location. And for the first time, we're doing this webinar both for people that are in the room and people that are outside of the room via our collaboration bar technology that allows for the audio video to be passed both to people external and to the people in the room to be part of the experience simultaneously. So please provide feedback because we would love to hear what your experience is like with this type of presentation style. Also, please use the question and answer section built into the application if you have any questions or you're having any problems hearing us or with any of the audio or video communication. So today we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 Business Voice. And we're focusing on the telephony capabilities of your environment today and what we want to do to potentially improve that. And I want to start with where we are at with business calling today and what most organizations already have in place. And what most organizations have today is either a traditional desk phone and or a cell phone being used for the majority of your telephone-based communications. That phone is tied to your existing phone system and is tied to your existing phone numbers, and that phone system and those phone numbers don't travel with you, they don't give you a lot of versatility, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later on, but with the amount of work from home requirements that we've seen over the last few months, doesn't give you quite the same amount of flexibility as everyone might want to have. If you are using collaboration technology today, it's likely a separate technology and a separate application or environment than what you're using for your telephone communications today. So it's another system or another app that has to be managed and has to be dealt with. Most organizations are going to have an on-premise PBX. You have to maintain that on-premise PBX. You have phone lines coming into that PBX, whether they be PRI lines, analog lines, possibly a SIP trunk. You have to maintain that service. And you've got multi-vendor complexity. You have a collaboration solution from one vendor potentially, or maybe multiple vendors. You have the phone system from one, hopefully not multiple vendors, but if you have multiple locations, you may actually have multiple phone systems from multiple different vendors. And then you may be dealing with multiple telcos. And so you may have multiple contracts you're dealing with those different telecommunications companies. So just to recap what a traditional phone system looks like today. Today, in a regular traditional phone system, we have endpoints, and those endpoints are typically a phone, whether it be a cellular phone or a desk phone. We then have some sort of local connectivity on your network for your desk phones back to your PBX, and then your PBX is connected to your phone company, which is then connected to the public switch telephone network. And the biggest problem is this portion of this is tied to a physical location and environment. It doesn't move with you unless you're on a cellular network, and that moves with you, but that cellular system is disconnected and separate from the system you have in your office. So we have a need in most organizations today to be more productive, and you'll hear us at Broadview Networks talk about productivity a lot. We talk about improving an organization's productivity through technology. It's a core focus of how we deliver our services to our customers. And productivity is an important concept of this conversation because we want to understand what we need to do to make not just a phone system that replaces your current phone system, but to help you with a phone system that actually allows you to do more. And we work differently today than we used to. We work more collaboratively than we ever did before. We work with more devices and more technologies than we ever did before. People need to be more flexible. This statistic, this actual slide, is a pre-COVID slide. And it was predicting that 72% of people would potentially be working remotely by 2020. Well, that prediction came true for a lot of organizations for quite a few months. And a lot of organizations' phone systems didn't do what they needed during that time period, and may not still be doing what you need, depending on how you're operating in the current COVID situation we have right now. Because those phone systems traditionally aren't designed to be used outside of your corporate network. We're also dealing with the most multi-generational workplaces we've ever had. We have people coming directly out of high school, coming directly out of university. We have baby boomers. We have the generations before and after potentially still in the workforce. And there are a variety of people that are coming to work now, especially on the younger side, that have an expectation of collaboration technology in what they do and how they work every day. They've grown up with iPads, iPhones, Android devices, Chromebooks, Facebook, the technologies where they expect to be able to communicate with anyone, anywhere, anytime, on any device. It's a norm for them. And a lot of workplaces aren't ready for that yet. So we want to understand how we move away from a traditional individual model of work to a collective model of work. And each organization is going to have to review their own business processes and their own workflows to understand how they do that and how that impacts them. But a cornerstone to making that possible is having the right technology. And an important part of that technology is your communication technology so that you can work productive intelligently and have a full level of functionality across a wide range of devices, no matter where you need to be working from. So we want to talk about how we're going to reinvent business calling with Microsoft Business Voice. We're going to move away from being tied to a desk phone to calling from any device, from any location, anywhere you might be. As long as you've got internet connectivity and you've got a device with the Teams app on it, you've got your phone with you. We're going to talk about the difference of juggling multiple different applications. Zoom or WebEx or whatever the other applications you might be using, a soft phone application, being able to do everything from Teams, your phone calls, your one-on-one computer-to-computer calls, your meetings, your collaboration events, your file location and storage, everything from one app, making it simple and easy to use. You eliminate those on-premise PBX costs, and you now go to a cloud-based solution, which, yes, is going to have an operating expense that's ongoing, because it's something you're paying for per user per month, but you're not dependent now on keeping old technology in place and running for a period of time to provide that telephone communication. And you go from multiple vendors and the complexity of managing and working with multiple vendors to a single provider. If you're already doing your Office or Microsoft 365 licensing with us, it's an easy solution. If you're not, we can certainly help you out with that as well. And when you're doing your licensing with us, we're already your first line of support for anything Office or Microsoft 365 related. So purchasing Business Voice supplied by us on behalf of Microsoft, we become your first line of support for that as well. So with Microsoft Phone System deployed and Microsoft Business Voice becoming your phone technology, we move away from a phone to an application, whether it's an application running on your laptop or desktop, whether it's an application running on your mobile phone, or whether it's an application running on a Teams desk phone. It's the Teams app. And the app is connecting over the internet to Microsoft's hosted PBX, and then that's connecting to the public switch telephone network. And really, you don't even have to worry about this portion. It's all managed and maintained and taken care of by Microsoft in most cases. You just have to make sure you have an app, and that app has internet connectivity. You got that? You got your phone, no matter where you are in the world, and however you want to get that internet connectivity for that device. So what is Teams? And what is Teams when we talk about a phone system specifically? So you may or may not be using Teams already for some of the different functions Teams provides, but we're going to focus today on adding the phone technology to Teams and enabling phone capability. And really, when you enable Teams as a phone system, it really just adds a couple of extra components to your Teams interface. Your calls tab actually gets lit up, and now when you click on that tab, you're able to see that you have a phone number, and whether that phone number is coming from Microsoft or it's coming from your existing telephone provider or potentially a new telephone provider, depending on how we want to set that up. You have a dial pad to be able to dial phone numbers. So you can make calls just as simply as you want. You can also cut and paste phone numbers from websites and just paste them in to make it much easier to make calls. You have a contact history and voicemail access, and you have the ability to access your contacts. So all the things you would expect to see on a traditional desk phone, but instead of being on a desk phone, they're now in the Teams application. Because again, the Teams app now becomes your phone. We're just taking the existing application, adding the phone functionality onto it. And you can manage your call forward settings from your settings, just like you manage your team settings for your status of being away, available, all of those different settings you might want to set. And it's very simple to use, implement, and maintain. It's a simplified communication solution built on the Teams app that many of us are already using for chat, for one-to-one, app-to-app conversations, and for meetings. Integrates with Outlook, integrates with your contacts, integrates with the rest of the Office/Microsoft 365 suite. You have all the basic calling features you would expect out of a phone system, easily, readily available for people to use. Place calls, receive calls, put calls on hold. You can have DID numbers, individual phone numbers for each individual user. You get to control what number people see publicly for each line for each user. You can have switching between devices, distinctive rings, lots of different typical phone system functions that are baked into the Teams client and the phone system back-end PBX functionality. Today, if you're already using Teams, you may have already used the app-to-app Teams calling function, where you simply click on a user, you click on the little phone icon, and you're not making a phone call to the user, but you're calling the other person on their computer that has Teams on it or on their mobile device that has Teams on it. And as long as they're on a device that has a microphone and speakers, they can receive that Teams call and you can have an audio conversation. Now we're going to be extending that to giving you the dial pad capability in Teams and giving you the ability to use the same interface to make a telephone call. That's all we're adding here from a complexity perspective for the end user. But more importantly, they're now going to be able to receive phone calls on their Teams application as well. And when they receive a phone call, very easy to use. They click the phone icon to answer the call. If they need to transfer the call, they click on the three dots, choose the transfer option. There's a couple of different options of transferring. You can do a consultative transfer where you start a chat first and say, hey, do you want this call? You can just do a blind transfer where you just send it to the person, or you can just transfer directly to their voicemail. So all of those options exist from a transferring to another person or from a receptionist perspective. Very simple to use and easy to manage how the call control function works. If you're already using Teams for meetings, you're already going to be very familiar with the interface that's being used to make all of this functionality happen. We're just adding on a few minor components. Again, if you're already using Teams for meetings or computer-to-computer calls, you have the ability already to click on the participants or add a participant to an existing call or meeting anytime you want. You simply add a participant, choose someone from your list of participants by typing in their name, or if you use them in the past, they're already going to be in that list, and you just add them to the call. You have the exact same capability with the PSTN functionality. Two people are already in a Teams call. On the Teams application, you click the add participants, you type in a phone number, and now you're calling someone external to the organization on their telephone to bring them into the meeting. Simple, easy way to bring people into the meeting. If they're not in front of a device with the Teams app, or they don't have internet connectivity, but they have a phone line or cellular connectivity, and you want them to be on the conversation. Again, same interface, same tools, no new extra steps you have to go through, just adding a slight modification to what we were doing before to take advantage of being phone enabled. Full voicemail functionality built in. You can see your voicemail messages in the Teams application. You can see your voicemail messages in Exchange if you're using Exchange Online. It's fully integrated. All voicemail messages are automatically transcribed, so you can choose to listen to the message, or you can just read the transcribed voicemail, which is really handy when you're on the road and you just are going through your emails. You can see all of your voicemails and actually read the voicemails without having to play them to listen to them. And then you can forward them to someone else, reply them, whatever you want to do with those voicemails. If you are in need of detailed compliance and archiving for your organization, and you already have those features enabled in your existing Office 365, Microsoft 365 tenant, then voicemail and Teams information around calling is going to be a part of that compliance and archiving automatically. A core tenet of Microsoft 365 is the ability for it to work anywhere, from any device, anytime. So that's an important function when we look at phone functionality within Microsoft Teams as well. And again, a function most people don't have within their existing phone system today. The array of platforms from an operating system perspective and browsers that is supported by Microsoft Teams is the widest of any product Microsoft's ever made. It works across multiple desktop operating systems. It works across multiple mobile platforms, both in tablet format or phone format, and it works across a wide range of browsers. So really there isn't likely any type of device that you're going to be using out there that you won't be able to use with Teams, either via a native app or via the browser to get that full Teams experience. When you want to provide that Teams experience out to your users, you're not limited to just using the computer. It's an option, and in many cases, it's the preferred option. But to get the full experience out of that, you don't necessarily just want to use the PC microphone and speakers that are built into a laptop or potentially built into a desktop. So we have the ability to add on a number of different devices. We have speakerphone pucks. This is a Jabra example. There's a picture of it there. This is what it actually looks like size-wise. It's actually quite small. It works over Bluetooth or over a USB connection, and it would actually cover this room quite well. I have one of these, and before we had the collaboration bar in this room, I would come into the room, connect this to my laptop, and have 5 or 6 people in this room having a conversation with the customer on this without a problem whatsoever. All different types of options of wired and wireless headsets, depending on what best suits your users and your needs. And some very unique devices that are starting to come into the marketplace specifically for the way people are working. More and more organizations, even before COVID-19, but certainly potentially post-COVID-19, are going to more teleworkers or hotel spaces in their office. So you may have a desk in your office that isn't dedicated to a specific employee. You may have a docking station there or be ready for someone to come in and sit down. This Alera speakerphone is a really interesting idea. You basically take your cell phone, you put it down on the pad beside, it Bluetooth joins the phone unit that's there, and it basically turns, so you don't have to use your actual mobile phone, it just becomes an interface for the Teams app with either a wireless or wired headset, a handset, and then a single touch Teams button for calling. So it's an easy way for people to just come in, sit down, and go. And you can even charge your phone while it's sitting in that cradle. We have a variety of Teams phones. So this is an example of the Poly CCX 500. There's a wider screen format. There are some models that are starting to come now with a camera option as well, so that people can actually use the phone itself for video calls. We have a variety of different types of devices for audio speaker conferencing in conference rooms or boardrooms, where it's a larger device with a multitude of speakers and microphones in it. And again, this device handles this size of room without a problem. And again, you make an account for the device, for the room, you invite it to the Teams meeting, and now it's done. You walk in, click a button, and you're in the meeting. Lenovo's recently announced another type of video conferencing solution for the desktop, where you have this on your desk, and it's a speaker phone, video phone, meeting join device all in one, basically a tablet with a nice stand so you can run it in portrait or landscape all built in. And then of course you can pair wired or wireless headphones to it, or plug in wired headphones or pair wireless headphones to it. What's an important part of the Teams experience is that your experience is going to be similar no matter which type of device you're using. If the device fully supports audio and video and you're joining meetings, you're going to have a similar experience across all those different devices. And now we have a number of different types of devices for how we can extend Teams functionality, not just for users, but for the organization as a whole. And we can telephone enable these devices as well. So the example is we actually have, this is the unit we're actually presenting from today, is a Studio X50. It's mounted right under the TV here. And then there is a control tablet, this little unit here called TC8 on the desk. And that's all we have to have on the desk to run this room, whether this room is joining an audio, video, and display conference like we're doing today, or if someone just needs to make a phone call, they just walk in, there's a dial pad on the tablet, and they dial the telephone to make a phone call. So now that's the only device you have to have in the entire room to be able to make and receive phone calls or participate in presentations. If you have larger rooms that have more dramatic needs for more speakers or microphones or multiple camera angles, we can put a Teams room system in place, and of course we can phone enable that. And there's even portable options. Microsoft has the Surface Hub that actually mounts on a rolling easel, and at the bottom, that unit that you see right here, that's actually a battery pack. This thing will actually run for up to 4 hours wirelessly on battery, and then you just reel it somewhere and plug it in. So you can go and take this in. It can join Teams meetings. It's got a camera built in. It's got speakers built in. So it can be a portable meeting space anywhere in your office that you might need. So it really doesn't matter what type of device you want to use. We can business voice enable, so telephone enable, all of those different types of devices. Everything from an individual device where you might want to add, headphones or earbuds to a mobile phone, to expanding what we can do with desk phones, to full conference rooms and meeting rooms, and adding the right type of audio equipment and video equipment to a PC or a laptop. Now, some people might be concerned that by going from an on-premise PBX that has, a long history, potentially from a manufacturer perspective, that we're going to lose some calling features by going to a hosted solution, and you're not. The basic calling features are all there: place receive calls, call history, switching devices. We have some advanced call routing functionality, do not disturb functions, delegation. If you've never used delegation in Microsoft Outlook, when you go away and set your out of office, you have the ability to set delegation so emails automatically go to someone else. You have the same capability in Teams. As a matter of fact, if you set yourself out of office in Outlook, it automatically puts you out of office in Teams because they're both connected to each other on the same back end in Office 365. So there's that integration that we see in the back end with the Microsoft stack. We have a full set of calling features: call park, call forwarding, call hold, transferring calls, share lines, all of those calling features that most organizations probably don't use that much, but they're there if you need them. Auto attendant functionality, call queues, and if you need more advanced call queuing and call center functionality than what's built into Teams, there's a number of third-party companies out there that have direct plugins to Teams that show up right in the Teams application, embedding existing call center functionality. And you're not losing an administrative functionality at all, and you're actually gaining, because this is probably one of the easiest systems to manage and maintain. Before I talk about the depth of maintaining it, I want to talk a little bit about the history of Teams, because a lot of people Teams sounds new. You may or may not heard of Skype for Business and/or Lync, and you probably haven't heard of Office Communication Server, but this is not a brand new product that just came out last week. This is the evolution of a telephony solution that Microsoft has had in place for now what is technically the 5th generation, because even before OCS, there was a live communication server. And this actually works out really well, because if you've been in IT for a long time, or you've heard the stories about Microsoft, most Microsoft products get really good in the 5th version. And we're actually on the 5th version now. So Teams really is a well-pedigreed and high-performing product that has been, in production now since 2017, has been voice-enabled since early 2019. This isn't new technology. It may seem new to be getting it from Microsoft because they haven't had a hosted solution for a long time, but Skype for Business, Lync, OCS, and Live Communication Server have been tried, true, and proven on-premise phone systems for quite a long time. It's a very simple technology because there's really not very much you have to manage. You take Office 365 and the Microsoft Teams app, you add on a phone system license, and then you give it some way to connect to the public switch telephone network, whether that be via Microsoft calling plans, where you just buy your phone numbers and a certain amount of phone call capability from Microsoft, very similar to buying a cell plan, or you purchase direct routing from a telco, where you either convert your existing PRI or analog service, and instead of coming through the phone lines that are in the ground to your current business, it now goes over the internet to Microsoft Teams for your phone numbers to get there and for your phone line capability. And we can discuss the benefits and disadvantages of each of those and what's the right solution for each customer based on what makes sense for your organization. It's not just Microsoft saying that they have a good history and experience with this, or us saying that. The experts in the industry are saying it as well. Microsoft is a leader in the Magic Quadrant for Unified Communications as a Service, the name for hosted communication services as a whole. Microsoft's a leader with Gartner, a leader with Forrester, and a leader with Gartner in meetings technology with Teams and Teams meeting functionality. It's very simple and easy to add on to an existing Office 365, Microsoft 365 plan. We're simply adding a phone system license, we're adding a calling plan, or not adding a calling plan, and now your users are phone enabled. Some configuration has to be done on the back end in the Teams Admin Center. The Teams Admin Center is web-based. It's part of your Office 365 admin console, and everything in the Teams Admin Center is done and designed to be completed by end users, not by people that have been working in configuring telephone systems for 20 or 30 years. If you go into a lot of PBXs today, even a lot of current generation PBXs, and you go in to try to configure them, the terminology inside of that device in the menus and the choices that you have is not intuitive for what it's doing. You would think that some of the terms that are being used are doing something different than what they're doing. And it takes a little while to understand the lingo and the settings that go with a lot of those phone systems. That's not the case with Teams. Very straightforward. You have users, you have phone numbers, you have call queues, you have auto attendants. They're all wizard driven to set up and configure. Very easy to use and very easy to administer. And we're here to help set it up and support it to make it even easier if you want to be hands off with the implementation and the management of it as well. You're also not losing for reporting and analytics. There is a call quality dashboard that gives you detailed information as to how many calls are going through, what time level there are on the calls, how the call function is operating, where it's being utilized heavily, and you can generate a large number of call reports, both telling you who's doing what in the phone system and what costs there are to the calls that are being made through the phone system. There's a number of compliance options for Teams as well. I didn't mention it a minute ago, but in that admin page, you also define policies. And those policies don't have to be the same for everyone. You get to configure the policies the way you want for the different users that have different needs. One need might be compliance recording. If you have people in your organization, in their role, recording their conversations is a requirement, either your requirement as an organization or requirements because of the industry that you're in, then you can set policy that those users' calls are automatically recorded every call they have. And you plug a bot into Teams that automatically makes sure that that's happening and then reports back the information about that, and then options for how you can receive and manage those recorded calls after the fact. Migration is often the hardest part of, change is the hardest part of any migration. So whenever you're going to put a new system in place or make a change from one system to another, the natural thing for every human being to do is to resist change. We don't like to change, it's a hassle, it's extra work. However, we actually adapt to change quite well. And as long as we make sure that we put together a solid plan and we implement in a coordinated and designed fashion, that change usually isn't that hard to get people to move through. You may have less of this change to deal with than you think, because more and more organizations have a larger amount of shadow IT going on. You may already have users in your organization that are using other phone systems than what you expect they're using, or other video and collaboration solutions, because you may not have anything in place for them yet. And we see a lot of shadow IT. This way we can remove that because we can provide a complete solution that's easily managed and secure from one provider. So whether it becomes technical issues or end user issues, both can be managed as part of that change, having a proper plan, going through a pilot session if necessary, and then having a good readiness solution in place. We have the option of coexisting with your existing phone system, if that makes sense for your organization, depending on what it is you want to do, or we have the option to just cut over. In either of those, we're going to start off in a perfect scenario by getting people used to using the base functionality of Teams. And that's going to be enabling Teams for those users and doing Teams to Teams calls. Let's not worry about the phone side of the world right now. Let's not worry about any of those components. Let's just get Teams on everybody's computer, hopefully get Teams on everybody's mobile device, and get them used to using chat, and from chats, starting Teams calls, or just making Teams calls to each other as an easy way to start communicating. Once they're familiar with the Teams interface, if they're not already using it, then we can start layering on the PBX functionality in phase 2. So we start having calls coming into Teams, being able to make calls from Teams. We may still keep an on-premise PBX in place for some functionality, depending on the organization. And then with phase 3, we begin the full transition of the PBX functionality and the phone line functionality into Teams, for all users. And phase 4, we're completely transitioned over to Teams and we decommission the existing system. Again, if that's what makes sense for your organization, you may want to keep your on-premise PBX for a period of time. It might make sense that the PBX stays for some departments and you put Teams Voice in place for other departments. And there could be a variety of different reasons why you want to do that. If you have a manufacturing facility and you have very basic phone needs in that manufacturing facility, you've already got a PA system that's enabled and operating throughout that facility, it might be easier to keep the existing PBX, put a session border controller in, an appliance that connects your existing telephone lines to the cloud, and then leverage a combination of that on-premise PBX and Microsoft Teams simultaneously. So it's really easy to get started with Microsoft Business Voice by phone enabling in Microsoft Teams. If you don't already have any Office 365 subscriptions, we can get you on a trial of Office 365. Once you have Office 365 in place, whether you're already purchasing it or you have it on a trial, we can get people using Teams again for that basic, user-to-user calling inside of Teams. And then we can activate a 30-day trial of Microsoft Business Voice, which provides the licensing and actually provides 30 days of calling plans from Microsoft for up to 25 users to be able to experience sending and receiving calls from Microsoft Teams. Now, we wouldn't likely recommend a trial with everyone in your organization. We want to keep it to a pilot group and get an idea of how that works with your existing workflows and potentially how you would operate that with your existing PBX if that's a need for your organization. But we're ready to go with those trials and getting that set up for an organization anytime. So I know that earlier in the presentation, you kind of saw some quick click-throughs that showed a little bit about what it looks like to actually use Teams, but I'm actually going to do a little bit more of a demonstration just so you can see the end user experience firsthand. So I'm going to get Jordan to give me a call. Just going to switch my display to be my desktop. So I'm getting a call right now from Jordan. It's actually coming through on my Teams desk phone. And you can see that Jordan's calling me, and it actually says Microsoft Teams audio. I don't know if that comes through, but I actually get to know that he's actually calling me on Teams. I also get that call on my mobile device, but I didn't get it on my PC. And I didn't get it on my PC because I'm in a meeting and I'm presenting, and Teams is aware of that. So it's not going to interrupt my meeting on my PC and disturb what I'm doing. But I can change my status, on Teams, and now Jordan calls me again. And it won't just ring on my desk phone, my Teams desk phone, and my mobile device, it'll also ring on my PC. So I actually see that Jordan's calling. And again, I know it's a Teams call because I just see his name, but I also have the video option. So I could choose at this point to start a video call with Jordan right from his actual audio call to me. Now, obviously, that's what exists in Teams. You've got that if you've got Teams in place already. You can see in my Teams, I have a dial pad. I have a phone number because my Teams is telephone enabled. So I'll get Jordan to call me from his cell phone. And you'll see that it will come up and recognize that it's an external number. And I'll see that external number, so I know who it is that's calling me, and I'll not have the option to start a video conversation because it's not Teams, it's a telephone call from an external phone system coming into Teams. I'm not going to answer the call and show the transfer functions because then it would put my meeting on hold and you wouldn't be able to see anything I was doing anyways. But that's that end user experience. It's that easy to use. Your device rings, you click a button, you're good to go. Even if you don't hear it ringing, you see it pop up. So you're going to get interrupted appropriately to get your call. If you do still want desk phone capability because you have users that have a reason they need a desk phone, the desk phone gives you the same capability as any other desk phone would. It gives you a few other capabilities though as well, because you see presence information on the desk phone because it is the Teams application. I'm going to move over to the center, and you see presence information for users. You see call history. So that's a nice benefit that you get out of Teams that you might not have in your existing phone system today, where you get to see if people are busy or not before you go to make a call or start a chat with them. A lot of Teams calls I end up having with people start with a chat and then turns into a Teams call, and then could turn into a video call because it often turns into a screen sharing session. And that's how we use Teams internally quite often throughout our organization. So yeah, that's an example of what Teams looks like and how it operates. So now I'd like to open up to any questions. I'm going to set myself back to do not disturb, just so I don't get interrupted while I'm answering any questions. Natalia, do you have any questions?
Does Microsoft Teams support call center analytics?
It does. So there's a variety of analytics that are built into Teams out of the box. And depending on the call center functionality that you're looking for, just get back to my desktop. But I can always take someone through the call quality and analytics dashboard and show the information from a call center perspective, but there is analytics built in.
Can we use Teams in a service desk environment settings?
Yeah, so the call center or the call queuing functionality that is built into Teams is designed to be used in a service desk functionality. So in the Teams admin console, you have the ability to create auto attendants and call queues, and those auto attendants and call queues can have a functional flow as to who gets rung in which order, groups of users, people when they log into Teams, join the queue, and then they're part of that queue or that group, and calls come to them. So queuing, auto attendant functionality, ring groups, all of that functionality is built in.
On-demand call recording.
On-demand call recording. I believe you can record the calls just like you can record any Teams meeting, but I would have to double check if you can do on-demand call recording. See if it is in that list. I know you can do call recording, but I don't know if it has to be compliance-based only or if you can do it on demand, but that's something you can certainly follow up. Okay, excellent. Well then, if there's no other questions, thanks everyone for your time, very much appreciated. If you have any further questions after this, please don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager or anyone else at Broadview if you have any questions about Business Voice and using Microsoft Teams as a phone system. Thank you very much.